The United States of America half-dollar 1980 D, bearing the familiar inscription Liberty, stands as a significant piece within the long-running Kennedy half-dollar series that began in 1964 after the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the 1980 D issue represents a stage in the coin's evolution when the half-dollar was still produced in large quantities for commerce, but was already transitioning into a denomination used more in banking, vending, and collector markets than in daily retail transactions. This coin, minted at the Denver Mint, carries the D mint mark located on the obverse just below Kennedy's neck truncation and plays a major role in the broader story of American coinage during the late 20th century, which saw changes in metal composition, minting technology, public demand, and federal monetary policy. The obverse of the 1980 D half-dollar features the left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed originally by chief engraver Gilroy Roberts within hours of Kennedy's death in 1963, and approved rapidly by Congress to honor the fallen president. The design shows fine details such as the textured hair, clean profile, and strong jawline, accompanied by inscriptions Liberty, the motto In God We Trust, and the year 1980, which together reflect both national identity and the coin's production era. The reverse, created by sculptor-engraver Frank Gasparo, depicts the presidential seal, an eagle with a shield on its chest, clutching arrows of war and an olive branch of peace, surrounded by a ring of stars and the legend United States of America. Half-dollar, a design intended to symbolize American strength, unity, and federal authority. By 1980, this reverse had already become an American cultural icon due to its repeated appearance on half-dollars for nearly 2 decades. The metal composition of the 1980 D half-dollar is the modern clad formula adopted in 1971 after silver was permanently removed from circulating half-dollars. It consists of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core, resulting in a total weight of 11.34 grams, a diameter of 30.61 millimeters, and a reeded edge, a combination producing durability, resistance to wear, and a distinctive nickel-silver color that differs from the 90% silver coins minted prior to 1965, or the 40% silver issues minted only from 1965 to 1970. By 1980, the U.S. Mint was operating at high production speeds with improved press technology, and the Denver Mint struck tens of millions of half-dollars, ensuring wide availability, though most of these coins circulated only lightly or were stored in Federal Reserve vaults because public use of half-dollars had declined significantly since the early 1970s due to changing consumer habits, the rising popularity of the quarter, and the failures of earlier half-dollar promotional campaigns. The 1980 D coin, despite being common, maintains historical significance because it illustrates the economic and political atmosphere of the late Cold War era, when inflation, changing metal values, and monetary reforms shaped U.S. coinage policies. Even though the half-dollar no longer contained silver, it preserved strong patriotic symbolism through its Kennedy portrait and presidential seal imagery, connecting Americans emotionally and historically to the legacy of the president. Collectors view the 1980 D half-dollar as part of the modern clad era, valuable primarily when found in pristine conditions such as in hire, which display sharp details, bright luster, and minimal contact marks. Such high-grade specimens are difficult to locate from regular circulation due to the large bag handling and machine sorting processes that tend to mark coins before they ever reach the public, meaning most circulated examples show dull surfaces, scratches, and rim wear. Numismatically, the 1980 D is often studied for strike quality differences, Denver Mint characteristics, and minor die variations, though no major errors are widely documented. However, occasional off-center strikes, die cracks, and planchet errors exist, and can be more desirable to collectors depending on severity, rarity, and eye appeal. This coin also carries cultural value beyond its monetary worth. The Kennedy half-dollar remained a popular gift item, ceremonial token, and commemorative keepsake throughout the 1980s, especially among families who remembered Kennedy's presidency or admired his image, making the 1980 D an object frequently saved in albums, jars, and personal collections rather than used for purchases. In the broader scope of United States numismatic history, the 1980 D half-dollar represents a stabilizing period when the mint settled into the post-silver era while maintaining traditional patriotic designs and preparing for future innovations in coinage, including later commemorative halves, and the eventual decline of half-dollar production for circulation in the early 2000s. Even though its metallic value is low and its rarity modest, the 1980 D half-dollar serves as a durable, tangible link between the legacy of John F. Kennedy, the Denver Mint's technical capabilities, and the everyday economic realities of America in 1980, encapsulating history, art, national symbolism, and numismatic evolution within a single piece of copper-nickel alloy, and ensuring its continued appreciation among collectors and historians who value the story behind each coin as much as the coin itself. Next, top 2. The United States of America 1982 D half-dollar, bearing the proud inscription Liberty, stands as part of the ongoing legacy of the Kennedy half-dollar series, a coin type first introduced in 1964 as a national tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his tragic assassination in 1963. By 1982, the coin had already undergone significant changes in composition, circulation habits, national symbolism, and public sentiment. The 1982 D half-dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the small d mint mark positioned on the obverse, just below Kennedy's portrait and above the date. This year is especially notable in modern U.S. coinage history because 1982 was one of the years when the United States Mint did not produce any proof sets, which makes the year stand out in the collecting landscape. The absence of proof coinage means that regular business strike examples such as the 1982 D became the primary representation of the year's half-dollar, intensifying interest among collectors who study strike variations, die states, planchet quality, and minting characteristics of circulation coins. The coin itself carries the modern copper-nickel clad composition, an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core, which replaced the earlier 40% silver alloy used from 1965 to 1970. This transition was part of the long-term economic decisions made by the U.S. government to maintain coin production stability and reduce dependency on precious metals, especially during the inflationary and metal market volatility of the 1970s and early 1980s. On the obverse, the design features the iconic left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy created by chief engraver Gilroy Roberts, showing strong details in Kennedy's hair, profile, and neckline, elements often examined by collectors to judge where patterns or detect exceptional strikes. The word Liberty arcs boldly across the upper rim, carrying the traditional American motto that connects all United States coinage to the nation's foundational values. Below the portrait lies the date 1982, along with the mint mark D, linking the coin directly to the Denver Mint's production records and its long history of precise industrial coin manufacturing. On the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, the coin displays the heraldic presidential seal, featuring the American bald eagle with its wings fully extended, clutching an olive branch symbolizing peace in its right talon and a bundle of arrows symbolizing national defense in its left. Above the eagle floats a ring of stars representing the states of the Union, encircled by the inscriptions United States of America and half-dollar. This reverse design remains one of the most recognizable and historically connected images in modern American numismatics because it visually links the Kennedy half-dollar to the presidential office itself. During 1982, half-dollars saw comparatively low circulation. By this time, American daily commerce had already shifted toward quarters, dimes, and increasingly paper currency, meaning that many 1982 D half-dollars never circulated widely and were instead shipped in bulk bags and rolls for banking storage or collector accumulation. As a result, many examples survive in relatively high grades, though sharply struck gems remain desirable because the Denver Mint's 1980s output occasionally shows weak strikes or surface abrasions from high-speed mass production. Numismatically, the 1982 D is appreciated for the stability it represents in a decade of transition, rising metal prices, changing monetary habits, and the ongoing debate regarding the future of the half-dollar denomination. Today, collectors value the coin for its connection to the Kennedy legacy, its place in the evolving clad coin era, its distinctive year without proof production, and the broader historical context that shaped U.S. currency in the early 1980s. The 1982 D half-dollar is not rare, but its story is meaningful. It symbolizes a tribute to a beloved president, a mark of technological change in U.S. minting, and a reflection of the shifting economic and social patterns that influenced American currency use during the late 20th century. Next, top 3. The 1986 P United States half dollar, part of the long-running Kennedy half dollar series, stands as a notable representation of American political memory, evolving minting technology, and shifting economic patterns in the late 20th century. This coin belongs to the series first introduced in 1964 as a national tribute following the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963. By 1986, the Kennedy half dollar had been in production for over 2 decades, and although its everyday circulation had significantly declined due to the public's habit of saving these coins as keepsakes, the U.S. Mint continued to produce them annually for banking and collector demand. The 1986 P half dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P Mint mark, which had become standard for Philadelphia issues only a few years earlier after being reintroduced in 1980. The obverse of the coin features the lifelike portrait of President John F. Kennedy, sculpted by Gilroy Roberts, showing a clean, sharp profile of the late president, paired with the inscriptions "Liberty" around the rim and "In God We Trust," symbolizing the nation's values of faith and freedom. Beneath the neck truncation sits the year 1986, marking it as part of the modern copper-nickel-clad era of American coinage. The reverse of the coin, designed by Frank Gasparo, displays a modified version of the presidential seal, with a heraldic eagle holding a shield on its breast, an olive branch in one talon symbolizing peace, and arrows in the other representing readiness to defend the nation. Surrounding the eagle are 50 stars, representing the United States, along with the inscriptions "United States of America" and "half dollar." The 1986 P. Kennedy half dollar is composed of a copper-nickel-clad layer, 75% copper, 25% nickel over a pure copper core, a composition standard for U.S. circulating coinage since 1971, after the end of silver circulation coinage. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, measures 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge, giving it the classic American half-dollar feel. During this period, half-dollars were rarely seen in everyday commerce, as the general public had shifted toward using smaller denominations or simply storing half-dollars as collectible items. As a result, the 1986 P issue, like most later Kennedy halves, circulated very little, making many surviving examples relatively well-preserved today. Still, differences in strike quality existed, as Philadelphia coins of the 1980s were known for occasional weak strikes, planchet marks, and luster variations due to the mint's high-speed production demands. The mintage for the 1986 P half dollar was in the tens of millions, ensuring it is not rare in general terms, but high-grade specimens, especially those graded MS-66, MS-67, or higher, are considerably scarcer and sought after by collectors due to the difficulty of finding flawless examples from this era. Economically, 1986 was a period of shifting U.S. monetary policy under the Reagan administration. Inflation had stabilized from the highs of the previous decade. The U.S. Mint continued modernizing its equipment, and coinage demand patterns were changing as electronic banking slowly expanded. The half-dollar's declining role mirrored a larger trend in American society, where certain denominations, especially the 50-cent coin and later the $2 bill, were becoming more symbolic than practical. Yet the Kennedy half-dollar remained a powerful cultural icon, frequently used in commemorative sets, gift items, casino machines, magic tricks, and patriotic displays. For many Americans, the coin symbolized both national unity and the enduring legacy of President Kennedy. Several die varieties and minting anomalies occurred within the 1980s Kennedy series, including minor doubled dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors, and collar issues. Examples appearing on 1986 P coins can be prized by error collectors. The typical coin, however, appears with a strong portrait, decent luster, and layered clad coloration, showing the subtle contrast between the nickel surface and copper core when viewed at the rim. In the larger numismatic context, the 1986 P. Kennedy half dollar represents a stable year in the series, produced during a time when the mint was focused on improving consistency, while also releasing major national commemorative coins like the 1986 Statue of Liberty series. Although not rare, the 1986 P half dollar remains important for those assembling full-date runs or mint-mark collections of the Kennedy series. Its value in circulated condition is typically face value, but in uncirculated mint state grades, especially MS-65 and above, it becomes more desirable, with exceptionally well-struck or perfectly preserved examples commanding premium prices in the collector market. In modern times, the coin serves as a reminder of America's late coinage evolution, the enduring admiration for President Kennedy, and the shift in how U.S. citizens use and collect money. Taken together, the 1986 P half dollar is not just a piece of currency, but a physical link to American history, political memory, and numismatic heritage, an accessible and symbolic coin that continues to attract collectors worldwide. Next, top 4. The 1996 P United States half dollar, bearing the inscriptions United States of America, half dollar, Liberty, and the portrait of John F. Kennedy, stands as a late 20th century chapter in the long-running Kennedy half-dollar series that began in 1964 in memory of the assassinated 35th president, and while its date, 1996, and its Philadelphia P mint mark may seem simple at first glance, the coin represents a unique intersection of declining circulation use, shifting U.S. minting, technologies, evolving collector demand, and the broader historical symbolism attached to President Kennedy's image. By the 1990s, the Kennedy half-dollar had already transitioned away from being a widely used circulation coin. Most Americans no longer encountered half-dollars in daily transactions, meaning that the 1996 P issue was minted in response to federal requirements and collector interest rather than genuine public monetary demand. Produced at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest U.S. mint facility, and historically the primary source of regular issue coinage since 1793, the 1996 P half-dollar continued the series' standard clad composition. An outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, a metal structure adopted in 1971 when silver was permanently removed due to rising silver prices, inflation, and the government's need to free precious metal stocks for industrial and financial purposes. The obverse again featured the refined 1964 design by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, showing Kennedy facing left, accompanied by the word Liberty wrapped around the rim and the date 1996 set below the truncation of the bust, while the reverse displayed the heraldic presidential seal crafted by engraver Frank Gasparo, consisting of an eagle with outstretched wings clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by the inscription United States of America and the denomination half-dollar, with 50 stars forming a circle symbolizing the Union of States. Even though the coin's design remained unchanged, the 1996 P issue was created during a period when the U.S. Mint was upgrading quality control and minting precision, leading to improved die polish, more consistent rim formation, and sharper relief details. Yet variations still occurred, including minor die rotations, light die cracks, weak strikes on Kennedy's hair above the ear, and occasional planchet defects, features that modern variety collectors sometimes pursue. Historically, 1996 was a year of relative political and economic calm in the United States, marked by the Bill Clinton presidency, growing technology markets, and increasing public interest in commemorative and collectible coins, which contributed to a gradual rise in numismatic hobby participation. This cultural shift indirectly supported continued half-dollar production, even though the coin was rarely used in commerce. Mintage numbers were modest compared to earlier decades. 1996 P mintages are commonly cited around 24 to 25 million pieces, a far cry from the massive mintings of the 1960s and 1970s, reflecting the mint's awareness that banks and businesses rarely ordered half-dollars in bulk. Because these coins were generally not heavily circulated, many 1996 P half-dollars survive today in high grade, resulting in a market dynamic in which circulated examples have mainly face value worth, while uncirculated pieces, especially those graded MS-66 or MS-67, hold greater collector value due to strike sharpness, lack of bag marks, and attractive luster. The economic context of the coin also connects to the broader trend of the 1990s U.S. economy. Low inflation, technological growth, and increased public saving habits, which indirectly shaped coin usage patterns. Smaller denominations thrived, while large denominations like the half-dollar continued fading from practical use. Culturally, the Kennedy half-dollar retained its symbolic power. Kennedy's image evoked themes of American optimism, the space race, civil rights progress, and the lingering emotional impact of the 1963 assassination, making the coin a small but persistent reminder of mid-20th century national identity. In numismatics, the 1996 P issue is often studied in relation to the shift toward collector-driven minting that became pronounced by the late 1990s, before the 1999 State Quarters program dramatically increased the public's interaction with U.S. coin collecting. With respect to technical details, the 1996 P half dollar weighs 11.34 grams, measures 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and has a reading count of 150 plus along the edge, features that conform to the clad half-dollar specifications standard since 1971. Its electromagnetic signature makes it distinguishable in vending machines and coin counters, though most modern systems rarely include half-dollar acceptance due to their low circulation presence. Numismatists also note that Philadelphia's 1996 production benefited from improved press pressure calibration and die lubrication techniques compared to the 1980s, producing more consistent luster across the fields, though some examples show common mid-strike friction that can dull the appearance of Kennedy's cheek and jawline. The reverse design of the 1996 P half dollar continues to be appreciated for its symbolism. The arrows represent military readiness, the olive branch peace, and the shield on the eagle's chest signifies unified national defense. Together, these elements embody the presidential authority associated with the office Kennedy held. Even though the coin lacks silver, it holds historical continuity with earlier silver half dollars. Flowing hair, draped bust, capped bust, seated Liberty, Barber, walking Liberty, Franklin, and early silver Kennedy issues, placing it within the centuries-long story of U.S. half-dollar evolution. By the time of the 1996 P release, the Kennedy half dollar had already become a coin more valued for sentiment and collecting than for spending, functioning as a symbolic artifact of the American narrative rather than a workhorse piece of currency. In modern collecting, the 1996 P is often acquired as part of full-date Kennedy sets, clad composition type sets, or mint-marked Philadelphia runs, and it represents an accessible yet historically rich item for beginners and advanced collectors alike. Its survival rate in mint state, the steady collector demand for complete decade runs, and the enduring cultural strength of Kennedy's legacy ensure that even a common mintage modern clad coin, such as the 1996 P half dollar, carries a depth of meaning beyond its monetary face value, embodying the intersection of American history, technology, memory, and numismatic tradition. Next top 5. The 1997 D United States half dollar, carrying the proud inscription Liberty and minted at the Denver Mint, D Mint mark, belongs to the long-running and culturally significant series known as the Kennedy half dollar, a denomination born from national grief and patriotic unity after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963. Although the original 1964 half dollars were struck in 90% silver, and the 1965 to 1970 coins were produced in a 40% silver-clad alloy, the 1997 D issue is part of the modern copper-nickel-clad era that began in 1971, a period in which the coin was no longer issued for circulation in large quantities, but still held a firm place in American symbolism, numismatic interest, and federal coinage traditions. One of the major reasons the 1990s Kennedy halves are fascinating to collectors is that, although they were officially circulating coins, public demand for the denomination had nearly vanished. Americans relied heavily on dollar bills, quarters, and electronic transactions, making half dollars highly uncommon in day-to-day use. As a result, the 1997 D half dollar was struck primarily for collectors, banks, and limited distribution. This scarcity in circulation gives 1990s halves a quiet mystique. They are modern coins, yet rarely seen in everyday commerce, creating an appealing bridge between numismatic history and contemporary minting practices. The obverse of the 1997 D half dollar features the iconic portrait of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, designed by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, capturing Kennedy's youthful strength, forward glance, and symbolic leadership during the Cold War era. The word liberty arcs boldly above his head, representing the core American ideal that Kennedy strongly advocated. Beneath the profile sits the national motto "In God We Trust," divided slightly by the lower portion of Kennedy's neck truncation, an intentional stylistic decision that has remained unchanged since 1964. At the bottom, the date 1997 is engraved, marking this coin as a product of the late 20th century, a time period when the U.S. Mint was transitioning technologically from purely mechanical engraving toward computerized die-making systems. On the obverse, near the truncation of the bust, appears the small but important D Mint mark, indicating that this coin was produced at the Denver Mint, one of America's most historically productive facilities, known for its high-quality circulation coinage output. The reverse design, created by Frank Gasparo, displays the presidential seal, featuring a heraldic eagle with a shield on its breast, holding an olive branch in its right talon, symbolizing peace, and a bundle of arrows in its left, symbolizing national strength and readiness to defend. Surrounding the eagle are 50 stars, one for each U.S. state, forming a unifying circle that symbolizes the unity of the American Federation. Above the eagle, the banner reading E pluribus unum, out of many one, reinforces the American philosophy of unity through diversity. Around the rim, the inscriptions United States of America and $50 define the coin's identity and denomination. This revered reverse design is one of the most enduring in American coinage history and contributes to the Kennedy $50's patriotic prestige. The composition of the 1997 D $50 is the standard modern clad alloy. An outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to an inner core of pure copper, giving the coin its silver-colored appearance but without precious metal content. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, has a diameter of 30.61 millimeters, and features a reeded edge. While earlier $50 were valued partly for their silver, modern clad halves like the 1997 D are valued for their historical, collectible, and condition-based qualities. The Denver Mint struck millions of these coins in 1997, but most remain uncirculated in rolls, bags, or mint sets because $50 saw limited real-world use. This means that high-grade examples, especially those graded MS-67 or MS-68 by professional grading services, can attract collectible interest due to their relative scarcity in pristine condition. From a numismatic perspective, the 1997 D $50 represents a transitional era in U.S. money culture, an era when coins were becoming less central to everyday transactions as electronic payments grew, yet the Mint continued to produce denominations out of tradition, collector demand, and federal requirement. The coin also embodies the lasting admiration Americans hold for President Kennedy. More than 3 decades after his death, his portrait remained a meaningful national symbol, and the $50 bearing his image continued to remind citizens of his legacy in civil rights, scientific advancement, public service, and Cold War diplomacy. For collectors today, the 1997 D $50 is appreciated as a modern classic, accessible but historically rich, a coin that connects the 1960s origins of the Kennedy series with modern minting practices. It is a piece of American heritage that tells a story of patriotism, national healing, and evolving cultural habits around money. Although it may not contain silver, its value lies in its continuity, symbolism, and the enduring respect for the president it honors. Properly preserved in a protective holder, the 1997 D $50 remains a clean, attractive, and meaningful addition to any U.S. coin collection, representing both a specific year in American history and a long-standing tradition in U.S. numismatics' next top 6.